we grew really, really fast. We had, a couple of years ago, our 3-year growth rate was like 1,000%.
What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast where we interview the best agency owners in the world so you can hear their stories, how they did it, their mistakes, and so you can actually avoid them or actually grow your agency faster. On today's episode, I have an amazing guest who has grown a $5 million agency, and we're going to talk about going from chaos to more structure and more efficiencies and a lot of the processes that they've used. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
I'm
It's
excited
great
to
to
have
be
you
here.
on.
Thank you.
So tell us who you are and what does your agency do?
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Antonella Pisani, and I started an agency called Eyeful Media about 6 years ago. About 90% of what we do is digital marketing, so paid search, SEO, paid social, copywriting, and then about 10% of what we do falls into digital strategy work, which is everything from really deep assessments when companies are maybe flatlining on growth, as well as supporting private equity firms who are in their due diligence process. We work primarily with mid-market companies. About 60% of what we do is B2C and about 40% B2B. So that's kind
Fantastic.
of a high level overview.
Awesome. And so how did you start your agency? Was this by accident? Did you have plans to do it?
Yeah, it was a total happy accident. So I had grown up on the corporate side. I had worked for companies like Fossil, Guitar Center, JCPenney, Pro Flowers, and was kind of burnt out on turnarounds. I had done a lot of turnaround work the last like 5 years of my career and took a year off to travel and was working on my own website and some interesting life events. But I started consulting for one company, and then through word of mouth, here we are. So there was never any intention to start an agency. I'd never even worked for an agency before and even barely used agencies in my career. I built a lot of in-house teams.
And let's talk about kind of the first couple years. What was that like when you started having team members and you really kind of transformed from kind of a consultant to an agency? What were some of the struggles that you were going through?
Yeah, so when it started out, it was just me. And so it was a lot of e-commerce strategy work. But what would happen is, I would build a plan for a company and they would say, "Hey, but you're telling me my paid search isn't very good, or you're telling me my SEO isn't very good. Can you guys help? Can you take that on for me?" And I would go and find a contractor, someone that I trusted. In many cases, it was people that had worked for me before or friends of theirs, and so would pull them in for different projects. And as we scaled after year one and two, what started happening was I wanted more predictability in terms of if I was going to go pitch someone, I wanted to make sure I had the hours. And that's tough when you're using a network of contractors. You can check in with them and say, "Hey, how's your bandwidth? Do you have 10 hours a week to take this on?" And they might say yes, but they're free agents, right? And so after a couple of years, that's when it started turning into, okay, I need to start hiring. And I started hiring people that were backfilling some of the stuff that I was still doing myself. Like I was doing a fair amount of SEO where I had outsourced a lot of the paid search to contractors that were
Mhm.
working for me. And so it was an interesting transition. Certainly anyone who's gone through that even from like a profitability side and having to think through solutions of how do you pay people and dealing with W-2s and all those fun things.
Yeah, I remember that very vividly. And
Yeah.
I remember it was just like, wait, I need to like interview you? I thought you were interviewing me to like
Yeah.
it was so backwards when we started. I hired many of the wrong people. Let's talk about some of the chaos that was happening before you really started kind of figuring things out, or if you had to go back, what was one of the big lessons that you learned from a big mistake that you made?
Yeah. So I would say, a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, have brains that can juggle a lot of different things at once, right? And that's why we become entrepreneurs. And, I think we thrive with a little bit of that chaos and that gives us energy. But I think it was really realizing that not everyone's cut from that cloth. And so to allow people to onboard quickly and to get up to speed quickly, you have to put in some sort of structure, right? Whether it's things like shared drives and sticking all your contracts in the same place, and a lot of that foundational, those things that maybe we take for granted when we go start a job for a bigger company, a lot of those things are in place. But realizing that not everyone is built the way that I am, and for them to succeed in their roles, that they needed a little bit more structure and discipline. Not so much in terms of telling them how to do their role, but just giving them access to information. I think that was one of the biggest things that we grew really, really fast. We had a couple of years ago, our 3-year growth rate was like 1,000%. And so a lot of times, like, I would talk to my CPA and say, oh my God, I feel like I'm constantly behind. And he's like, you are, because you're growing 10 years worth every year. And so as that agency owner, you can kind of beat yourself up. But looking back, I wish I had, structured certain things from day one. Like, I'm the kind of person that can throw all my files into like one Google Drive folder and then just search for it. But that's the type of thing that really hurts new employees when they're trying to get up to speed, and doesn't necessarily give them the most confidence either.
Yeah, you were telling me kind of in the pre-show, kind of 3 years ago, it was kind of the year of infrastructure. So let's talk, let's kind of dive
Yeah.
into that. What made you kind of focus 3 years ago on infrastructure, and then walk us through kind of what you did on there? Because there's a lot of agencies that we're still in chaos. We don't have any
Yeah.
infrastructure. We don't have any structure. We don't have any efficiencies. It's kind of like we're all reactionary, and it's driving everybody crazy. And then they come to me to buy their agency because they're in distress. I'm like, we don't buy distressed agencies. We buy good agencies.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, it was interesting, right? So years 1 and 2, like, it was still a pretty small group, and it was me and maybe a couple of contractors. And then, towards the end of year 3 is when we started landing some bigger clients, and so that meant that I was starting to pull some people in. And I would say, like, there were a lot of things that you just, you do it when you're an agency owner or any sort of founder, that you just take on all the jobs that, like, there's no one else to go do, right? And so, and if you're still a billable person, you're trying to do all of those things while you're working, especially in those first few years. Like, you can't really afford to go hire that management layer that you desperately need as you're scaling. And so, a lot of it became, what are those software pieces that we need in order to enable scalable growth, right? So I think we were talking about, like, those first couple of years, you're you're paying contractors through like PayPal instead of some sort of a payroll solution, and then it's just a nightmare come January when you're trying to issue W-2s. I was on QuickBooks Self-Employed because, I never thought I was going to build a company, right? And like, those conversions and the lack of actual like reports that you can use. And, I was still doing a lot of the like categorization of transactions myself. Then it was like, okay, we need to go find someone to do back office accounting. And so it was literally just kind of going piece by piece on all that operational stuff. Fortunately, we had been doing like time tracking and some of those things because it was requiring us, or we used it a lot for like billing clients or whatnot. But it was kind of going solution by solution. And, even things like one of my closest friends is a CIO, and I had hired his ex admin. And like, first thing, she's like, we can't share passwords through Slack anymore. Like, I'm putting LastPass in. And so I think that it's just looking at all of those pieces and figuring out what's that software solution that's going to enable you really to build the culture that you want. I think for me, it was, yes, there's foundational things, but like, we put in an employee management system that allows us to keep tabs on how people are feeling, right? And unify kind of our where we host our like one-on-ones and things like that. And I think as we looked at those solutions, it was really about, what type of business do I want to build, right? From a culture perspective, a values perspective, and what are the things that make it easier for people to have that kind of experience, both on the client side and for the employees.
Yeah, I almost look at it as kind of the first couple of years are around gaining clarity of what you
Yeah.
don't want in order to figure out what you actually want, right? From employees to clients that you want to work on, services you want to actually deliver. And then kind
For
of
sure.
the next step is really kind of around the infrastructure. And see, a lot of people rush into all this. They think they need to do it all at once rather than kind of going up the mountain kind of slowly, rather than it's really risky to go up a mountain kind of vertical. But if you can kind
Yeah.
of find a track that's a little bit more safe, like you can slip and you can still catch yourself versus you're free soloing it like that one dude, which is just crazy. Like my hands are sweating just thinking about that. And I think agency owners are a lot like that as well, of going, well, I need to go up as fast as I possibly can. But a lot of times you slip and you don't actually recover. So let's talk about kind of the year of structure. So now
Yeah.
you got a lot of this infrastructure in place. What were you doing and what kind of structure were you guys putting in place?
Yeah. So it really became, first came a lot of those software solutions. And I think from an advice perspective, it's find those solutions that can scale with you, but also kind of charge by the person or something so that you're not spending a ton of money up front, but then it's a low incremental cost to keep it scaling with you. It might be an extra $6 a month per person or $10 a month per person. Slack was one of the ones that like I had a mutiny on my hands because we were still using like Google Hangouts because it was cheap, right? And so, I think when we moved past having a lot of those software solutions in place, it became okay, how do I set up the organization in a way that we can add people to it and not dilute kind of the quality of work that we're doing for clients, not dilute that employee experience? And so, what's really hard being an agency owner is, like I mentioned before, it takes you getting to a certain revenue level before you can afford to hire people that are primarily managers. And you're stretching people. It's hard, right? And as we started getting up into those bigger revenue numbers, now it was, okay, let's put a group director in over SEO. Let's put a group director in over paid media. Let's go get a project manager. And so the difference for me between that year of infrastructure and structure was, okay, now we've got the tools and technology that's helping make people go smoothly, or making things go smoothly. Um, Now let's start adding those people layers and then start really dialing in how we're using some of those software solutions. In some cases, we had to make some changes, but to me, we kind of built the agency backwards a little bit. Like, so I only hire senior people. I think bare bones minimum is like 6 or 7 years of digital experience. Our average is about 13. It's actually probably higher now. But so I was at least hiring in those early days, like some people that would be seasoned enough to be able to lead others. But I think we went like one level higher that year of structure so that we could continue to kind of build teams underneath them. Because it's hard, right? You start landing clients and you need to add people, and if you don't have the right structure, it's like I wasn't going to do a good job if I was managing 10 direct reports. Like you have to start pulling in some of that hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah. I looked at it as, it's amazing. Everyone's story is really kind of this very similar. Like we're accidental. We get some clients.
Yeah.
We knew how to do something cool, right? They offer us money. We try to do everything ourselves. Then we hire like low level talent. And then we're doing all the stuff we probably shouldn't be doing. We're still charging the same rates that we were in the very beginning, which are probably obscenely
Mhm.
low. Like this is a question I used to ask. I haven't asked it in a long time. Your first client you brought on in the agency, what'd you charge them?
I was charging maybe like 225 an hour, 250 an hour, somewhere in that
Okay.
range.
All right. Not the
Yeah.
$500 project or $50 an
No, no, no,
hour.
no. No, no. I think because of the role that I was coming from, right? So I'd been VP of global e-commerce for Fossil, right? So, and I had good advice. So I had one of my closest friends. He's a CIO, but he spent a lot of years working for Deloitte and the consulting side, and so I had some good guidance from day one on what to do. I think had I started it as a paid search manager or something like that, that I really would have underpriced. But
Yeah.
on that front, I think I did okay. I think where the one that's really hard to learn is when you are doing fixed vid like strategy projects where I'm the kind of person that like just keeps digging and wants to turn over every rock and like find more insights. Those are tough. And it takes you a while to figure out what you really need to charge for those.
Yeah.
I'm my own worst enemy on like scope creep.
Oh, scope creep. Don't even get me started on scope creep. But I will
Yeah.
give everyone a hint, or I'll give you the best strategy I've ever done to eliminate scope creep. And it's doing a $0 change order. So when your clients come to you for something, because your clients are always going to ask you for things, but they don't know if it's in scope or out of scope. Like they just don't
Yeah.
understand. But when they come to you and you say, hey, like with the little things, go, no problem, we'll do that. This is actually out of scope. We're going to do this for you for free. We're going to send you a $0 change order. I just need you to sign it. So now you're
Hmm.
programming them that they are getting something that they should be paying for. So then when they come to you for the big thing, you've already programmed them and you've already given them two or three things that took you maybe 5-10 minutes. Now you can be like, this is out of scope. We've already given you three or four things that we should have charged you for. And
Yep.
then you're keeping profitability and you're afford to hire the right people to come
Yeah.
in.
No, that's
So,
a cool one. I will,
yeah.
I jotted that one down.
There you go. Now
Yeah.
let's talk about kind of the year you're in right now, the year of
Okay.
efficiency, I think you called it. So walk us through
Yes.
that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to, there's two paths. Some is automation. And, some of that is like we started using Domo mid last year to build out reports, trying to shift the team from spending a lot of time like pulling down data into giving them time to interpret and analyze that data instead. So the year of efficiency to me is everything from like that kind of stuff to, one thing I'm really proud of and excited about is we do a lot of training of our people. And by that, I don't mean like, hey, here's how to maximize Pmax, right? Like, yes, we do that kind of stuff and that's table stakes, but we're trying to do a lot of leadership development. And, to me in this role, like, I see myself as responsible for kind of growing that next generation of leaders. And so that's the stuff that can also make you more efficient and make people stronger. One thing I think about a lot is there's this concept of like the people who got you here won't get you there. But like I think if we invest a lot in that leadership development and training, those people can be one and the same. And so, for me, efficiency is also like how to cut through, right? You don't want people spinning on things, how to give and make effective requests to people, how to have committed actions and things like that that just make you work better. And so for me, it's both paths. Like I think there's some stuff where it's like, yeah, or there's some cool scripts we can go write for Google Ads that make us more efficient. But a lot around that way, those ways of working, and it's stuff that we're going through as like a senior leadership team, and also trying to push it down to every level because I think a lot of the companies I've been part of, there was one exception, which was Pro Flowers, which made a lot of this type of training available to everybody. But so many companies, like this kind of stuff is your VPs and SVPs and EVPs. And so by pushing it throughout the organization and trying to build that common language, I think that's the stuff that's really going to make us efficient and how we work. Some of it comes down to like project management. It's PM is not easy for everybody, right? I think on the SEO side there was faster adoption there. I think figuring out the best way for something like paid media, where a lot of times you're popping into an account and spending 5 minutes in it, and you don't need a project task for that. But thinking through like how do we document things? How do we standardize things? Like, hey, let's use this type of agenda structure. Let's use this kind of recap structure so that you can
Mm-hmm.
copy the PM and they can throw tasks into Asana for you. So it's something that we're attacking from a lot of different fronts. We've grown really, really fast, and so sometimes when you're growing that quickly, it's hard to spend time on this stuff. But we know that it's going to be critical for us to continue to scale while again maintaining that client experience and that employee experience.
I love it. I think you honestly did it the right way. Being consistent, taking your time, and thinking about the infrastructure, and then adding the people to that. And now you're in, kind of the scale mode where you're thinking about like, what can we eliminate? How can we make this more efficient? And you can't really do that until you have that clarity and that confidence of where you're actually going. So I applaud
Yeah.
you on that, and that's why you guys have had rapid growth, and you always feel like you're behind because you're growing so fast. That is a normal feeling that we all go
Sure.
through, and we're like, and a lot of times too, like, have you ever thought about going, man, we're growing too quick. I need to pump the brakes.
So I wouldn't say that we pumped the brakes, but we've grown 100% through word of mouth. We finally, about 5 months ago, started doing a little bit of PR and some of the podcasts and things like that. But it was more that like we went through these periods of time where it was like, we don't have a biz dev person or anything like that. And it was, hey, should we go partner with someone for maybe some outsourced lead gen? And it was more so that we didn't pursue those things. Like a lot of times we would start talking about, should we start marketing ourselves? And the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right?
Mm,
And it was more that we decided to hold back on doing any of that stuff until we had that structure right and that infrastructure right. Because again, like it's the common thing you'll hear me say is like, this isn't going to be fun if like we're not doing the best work for clients and employees are not having fun. And so it's, I think we became a lot more selective in terms of what we took on, right? And being a little bit more comfortable saying no to certain types of work where, there's the corporate life cycle. And you've got those early days, which is called go stage. And that's where you're just taking everything on. And so kind of growing through that maturity and getting more comfortable saying, hey, we've got a nice base of business here. Like it's okay to start saying no to this type of work. So I think we pumped it that way, just to make sure that we we weren't going to implode. I mean,
yeah.
that would be scarier than everything.
Yep. Exactly. Well, this has all been amazing. What's the agency website? People can go and check you guys out.
Sure, it's Eyeful Media, which is EYEFULMEDIA.com.
Awesome. And we'll link that up on the show notes for you guys that are
Awesome.
bad spellers like me. But thanks so much, Antonella, for coming on the show. Amazing insights. I love the kind of the phases of the year of. That's probably the title of this episode. But for
Cool.
all the agency owners out there that love this episode, please share it out with another agency owner that I think they can really help from listening to her story. And if you guys want to be around other amazing agency owners where we can help reduce your stress, increase your profit, create more freedom, predictability, and wealth for you in building your agency where your agency is more of an asset than an agency burden, I want to invite all of you to go check out agencymastery360.com and maybe we can help you out. And until next time, have a swank day.